Good morning and greetings to you from what is a beautiful spring morning here in the Alps. The sun is out and it's melting the snow, so I'm looking forward to being able to see the earth again out in the garden and seeing what pops up. This little video is, I guess I'm sharing it because I'd like to be able to show those of you who are interested a more sustainable way of creating art and working with the land in an ethical way, a respectful way, a sustainable way, getting to know the land intimately through palette remediation, and I guess just ways that we can really let ourselves be known to our immediate environment and become a rock star to our immediate environment and really get to know the land, allow the land to get to know us intimately, and the things that we can co-create together, humans and non-humans, when we do that. So this here is actually a selection of art supplies, I guess you would say, wild colour and mark making tools that have been created over the last little while. Some of these you will recognise from previous posts, but I just wanted to show this selection together for those of you who are interested. And this here is going to be heading over to Ireland. I'm just about to pack it up, and it's going to be a gift for my Auntie Zoe, who's turning 81, not so far off from here. And she is an artist. She has been all of her life, and she's multidisciplinary. So I wanted to make sure that what I selected for her would include many different disciplines and many different applications as well, I guess. So to begin, I want to show you this, which is salmon leather. It's basically a tanned hide of Irish salmon, and it's on a stipend holdfast of dried kelp. I figured that she probably wouldn't have printed or made marks or painted or drawn on salmon leather before, so I wanted to offer this to her as an alternative, and I know that she will probably enjoy it a lot. Similarly, with the holdfast and stipe of the kelp, it's quite a beautiful shape and has possibilities to make marks and to print interesting marks as well. So I thought that she'd like to receive that and have fun with it, and I'm sure that she'll find lots of different things to do. This is blackberry artist paper. It's 300-gram artist paper, eco-printed, so that's contact printed with blackberry leaves from just the back hedge here behind the house, and mordanted with iron and tannin. Then here, because my aunt, she loves sticks and stones and bones and all sorts of things like that, there's just a selection of some of the stones that I would have collected, or little sticks. This is beautiful veins going through it here. It's in a heart shape as well, and I love the colour. This has a quartz vein going through it, and it is a purple, sort of a slate. And I love the various different species of lichen that you can see in this. This here is like a little piece of driftwood, which is like a wooden nut almost, and some bark, which is from a pine. Here we have the Earth Prayers palette, which is a collection of earth pigments, stone pigments, mineral pigments, and botanical pigments that have been made into these ritual color wands, which can be used on the skin as ritual body adornment. They can be used on stone, on bone, on wood, on all sorts of surfaces. They can also be used, obviously, on artist paper in the way that you would use pastels, and they can be used wet and dry. So these are a selection of pastels that are going to her. Just beneath that then there is some artist charcoal, which is made from willow prunings, and I've put these inside in little elderflower branches, which I hollowed out, obviously, took the pith out of it, split them in two, and used that as the holder for the charcoal so that her hands won't get black. Then just up here we have a little birch paint palette, which I've included some of these little 5 milliliter tins in as well, just in case she doesn't want to actually put the colours directly into the pans that are there, or if she has more colours that she wants to use, instead of just having 8 fixed ones in here, then she can swap out the little tins as time goes on and just work with her palette that way. Moving over here, we have a selection of, this is, it's all botanical. Oh no, sorry, there's 2 earth ones in there. This one is Happy Place number 6, which is just from the river down here. And there is also a Bantry Bay shale in this palette. These are all lake pigments, so botanical pigments, so colour extracted from plants and trees there as well. And the colour palette for this was inspired by things that she might find around her garden and trees that I know that she has in her garden. And she was the person that always said to me as a child, what is a weed but an unloved plant? And so what I did is I went and included pigments of weeds that I know are growing around her garden. You know, things like nettle and bramble, and just thought that it would be a nice sort of a way, dockleaf obviously as well being another one. I thought it would be a nice way of giving this back to her in many, many ways. And I'm not able to give her a bunch of flowers, but I can give her a bunch of colour and hopefully a bunch of creative time. This here is a selection of wild clay paint pans that are filled with colours from Bantry Bay. Those of you who've been following what I do for a while, back in 2019, you would have seen the paint palette that I created from materials basically that I found along the coast, in the water and on the land in Bantry Bay, down in West Cork where I come from. And I gathered some of the wild clay along the coast there and hand carved these little paint pans. I just wanted to make a little installation basically of wild colour, and this is it. I've put some of these beautiful lichens around it as well because I absolutely adore them and know that Auntie Zoe will love them too. And they are all secured on this piece of wood, this slice of wood, so that she can hang this on her wall in her art space if she wishes. Just below that, there are some crayons that were made with earth pigments, ground stone, and these crayons looked like this actually. The ones that are over here I took out of these molds, and the molds themselves are the dried stalks of Japanese knotweed. Now, those of you in Ireland will probably go, oh, Japanese knotweed, oh my God. But you know what? There's so many things that are really, really handy with Japanese knotweed. It's a delicious edible. You really can make some incredible stuff because it actually tastes like a really almost nicer version of rhubarb. It's absolutely delicious. Medicinally, it's absolutely wonderful as well. It's one of the key ingredients that you would be working with in order to combat the symptoms of Lyme's disease, which also is something that's rampant down in West Cork. So those of you down in West Cork, you should be eating them and not spraying them with pesticides, nasty old pesticides. And there's a lot of ways that we can manage these invasives in a more sustainable and planet-friendly way. My suggestion is to eat them and then to use the stalks as well, for those that you don't actually harvest, to use the stalks as these molds because they're actually hollow as is. They have nodules in the stalks every 10 or 15 centimeters depending on the size of the plant, and these are sealed, so they're a naturally occurring mold that we can work with. And these pigments are ground up stone and beeswax, and then it's poured into each of these. It's allowed to go hard, and then you can either take the crayons completely out of the molds by breaking the molds open, or you can peel them back a little bit like that. Totally up to you. So you can see both variations there. Here you can see a selection of mark makers. So there's some twine that I was actually gifted by Martina, a teacher over in Brixton in Thal, not far from where we are. So that would have been part of something that she might have given me over the past couple of years, and I do remember holding on to it. So this is heading over to Auntie Zoe as a lovely little mark maker for colour play. There is some reindeer fur that'll also be really, really interesting for mark making. This is actually just a piece of a fur that I have here in the studio that I use for my own seating. And there is broom. broom is a really beautiful spring blossoming plant whose flowers, the wild one that I have here is one that I brought with me from Ireland, and its flowers resemble sweet pea sort of flowers, like gorse flowers, and traditionally broom, as the name suggests, would have been used to create brooms, and I think they're called besoms in English, these little hand brushes that are used for spring cleaning. But certainly they were used for yard brushes and barn brushes. And as the one that I have here in the garden that I brought with me from Ireland got damaged with snow this year, I saved the twigs from it in order to make some brushes and some mark makers. These are some feathers from the rooster which lives next door to us, that he would have lost over the last year or so, which have of course been frozen in order to kill off, I suppose you'd say, any nasties that might be waltzing around in there. So yeah, this would be a very interesting mark maker as well, and these are on another piece of this beautiful pine bark, just like the crayons. So now, oh yeah, there's another mark maker here, which is essentially just bound up wild rosemary that I gathered down in Slovenia the year before last when I was there with my trauma clinic. I go down to the Balkans every year. I try to go every July at least, in order to offer my services to the communities down there, for those who are displaced from war or violence, or those who are survivors of sexual violence. And while I was down there, obviously, I'd been gathering some herbs that are native down there and not growing up here. So this was one of them. And this here is a nice little mark maker. You could also use these as skewers for something like if you wanted to roast fruit, that would be absolutely delicious, or barbecue fruit. But clearly, being rosemary, this would be perfect for any sort of meats that you would like to roast or barbecue as well. But I chose to hold on to this as a mark maker for my Auntie Zoe because she rocks my brainy head. Moving on. So you can see here there's more Japanese knotweed. This is actually an eco print, a contact print on artist paper, again 300 gram paper. And these are double-sided contact prints. As you can see, the Japanese knotweed lends itself beautifully. In late autumn, early winter, it is rich in tannins and the colour is peachy brown, sort of a rust sort of a colour, and it's just gorgeous. I really love it. This here is a small little artist booklet that goes together with this collection of pigments, the lake pigments that were made. So it's just a little mini booklet for that. And up here you can see there is a colour palette of inks, and the inks are just here. These inks are actually available in the store. And the last time I was in Ireland, which would have been up until November 2019, I arrived up to Auntie Zoe for lunch one day with a load of wild inks that I had been making in my dad's place where I had been staying for the few months. And it was like a little hedgerow postcard of colour from his place to hers. And she was tickled pink by the inks and the ink making potential and the art making potential. So I thought I'd give her some of these as well. So that's the selection of Shades of Ishka, which is Shades of Water, the wild colour ink collection available in my store. And there are some, I affectionately call them brain fart journals up here, which are also ironically available in the store, but these are contact printed, hand sewn booklets for journals, so that's for writing, and they're sealed there, as you can see, with some selenite wax and some grass and some wild heather and a little bit of selenite crystal put in there too. Now, as I mentioned, Auntie Zoe loves sticks and stones and feathers and bones and all sorts of things like that. And these are just a few more of the, what I call exceptional stones that I end up bringing back up from the river or anytime we're out for walks. So she's getting a selection of the stones that end up filling my pockets while I'm out and about. These here are mark makers as well, so you can dip them into colour and write with them. And here there are some other mark makers. So this would be really interesting. This is, I think, a type of thistle. The geometry in this is just stunning. I hope you can see it. But yeah, if you dip this into a paint, if for instance you decided to make watercolor paints out of the lake pigments, or indeed if you wanted to work with the inks and thicken them up a little bit more by using adding more binder to it, for instance, then you could just dip this into it and mark your paper with it. You could also grind up some of the willow artist charcoal and make an ink, sort of a ink that would resemble sumi ink, which is the Japanese fish scale ink, and mark your paper then accordingly. But these are collectively made from, this is nettle cordage, this is a horse hair, and I had some of this left over from a commission that I was working on a couple of years ago. And the last time I was speaking with Auntie Zoe, she was telling me about my granny, her mother, and she was a very accomplished violin player, and I thought, wouldn't it be lovely actually, seeing as this horsehair is traditionally used for violin bows or fiddle bows, to make a little mark maker, a little paintbrush for her from that. So that's a direct reference to Granny Neff, her mother, and my grandmother. This, as I say, is nettle cordage, and these are all on prunings that would have come from the garden, and it's dogwood and a little bit of, yeah, it's all dogwood actually. These are pine needles, which are just strung up again with cordage onto a little handle of dogwood, and little mini twigs of dogwood. And other than that, let me just see. Oh yeah, there is this last one here, which is a rather large one, because I've been playing around an awful lot with the practice, the Zen practice of mark making, and the circle has been playing around in my head quite a lot, no pun intended, or maybe all puns intended, but mark making and ways of producing this on paper. And I ended up using this beautiful piece of birch stick that would have been snow fallen from a few years ago, and then binding up some fresh rosemary onto it in order to make marks. So again, to dip it into your colour and then mark whatever medium you're using, for instance paper, or if you're using canvas or any other sort of textiles, anything basically, that this would be your mark maker. It'll probably dry fairly quickly, but I think that'll also be part of the charm behind it, because I sort of like the idea of bits of the rosemary breaking off and drying into the art piece as your paint dries. So this is the selection that is going over to Auntie Zoe for her 81st birthday present. As I say, I just wanted to share this with you so that you can see ways that we can actually work sustainably with the land, and gently with the land, and that we can walk gently as one with nature while we're here and visiting this planet. And you know, there's no need for us to be buying this commercial, synthetic, mass-produced, petrochemical shite basically from the other side of the world. You know, there's no need for it, there's no excuse for it. Gift yourself this beautiful gift of time by going out. Let the land get to know you intimately. Allow yourself to get to know the land intimately. And this is evidence of what can happen if you just leave the phone at home, go out on your own. Don't be going out with friends, because then you're going to be talking and nattering and you'll get sidetracked and you'll miss what is absolutely underneath your feet at any given moment. So just allow yourself the time to go out and allow yourself to be seen and heard by the land, and the land will inspire you in these sort of ways and more. So I hope that this does inspire you to get out and to learn and to just be quiet, I guess. You know, it's not so much about the end result of the art pieces you make, it's about the whole process, just like life itself. For me, the ritual is always in the making. It's very little to do with the end product of anything, you know. So for me, when I look at all of these things, I have so many memories. There's hundreds of hours here of stillness, of absolute nothingness in my head. And that is the gift. That is the absolute gift. So I hope that you will, those of you who are artists or enjoy creative meditations or art therapists, I hope that you will consider this and consider this idea of pallet remediation and working a little bit more ethically and sustainably and respectfully with the land. And I hope that this will inspire you into ways that you can do it. And wishing you all a lovely weekend and lots of love from us here in the Alps.